Well, one thing that was really seems to be important, I think, because the Idea Camp is all about people making change on a local level. So where people feel empowered, and the sense that that really has to have also an engagement and empowerment by the authorities or the municipal framework or regional framework around them. So this bridge between an idea someone's got in civil society and a city. How do you see it from the city side, you know, working with civil society on these change-making ideas?
Okay, what we have identified is like different fields. I think that one is, what are the resources that we have? I mean, the sense, and this has to do also with the theory of the commons and how we have worked between the relation of the public institutions and the common resources. How we actually are taking care of collective resources, spaces, money, but also a huge amount of social and symbolic capital that the town hall somehow manages. And how we can coordinate that when the people have ideas, when the civil society wants to develop projects, they need certain kind of resources. Sometimes they need recognition, sometimes they need communication, sometimes they need also money resources to do it, or they ask for spaces. So for us, it was always important to see, okay, what are we having? No? And what these processes need and how we can articulate this. But then, in the situation of Madrid, it is complicated because institutions don't usually think like this. Institutions think that they have their own resources and they want to control them. They want to develop their own projects. And also one of the most difficult things that we find in the town hall is that because you have a scheme where the institution has been doing things and not doing them is very complicated. It's very complicated to say, okay, we are not going to do this program or we are not going to do this festival because someone else is going to do it. And then you also have this problem of how do you choose
which things you do and which things you let somebody else do, where ownership is, because it needs to be a much more shared understanding of a common objective to go somewhere. And you bring on one side of the table you have needs and you have assets that you bring, and equally on the other side. So it also should address the needs from the municipal side. So you were talking about what the municipality can bring to civil society initiative, for instance. What does the city gain from that civil society one? So I think that's an important way to look at it as well. What does civil society bring to you or to the city? You know?
It brings things like the Idea Camp, for example. What we said is this is a way to identify new needs, because you cannot have, like, I don't know, whatever, 200 people to know everything about the city. There are many things that we don't know. There is knowledge there. There is also proposals that we don't think of. So this is one thing that we gain from social movements, from the communities in the territories. They know their territories better than we do.
You get the practice. You get what's happening on the ground.
We get what is happening on the ground. We also get something different, like the way the institutions do things and the way the collectives do things are totally different. We set up, I don't know, a space to read, which is a library. It has certain rules. It has to get into a certain frame. It has certain criteria. If people self-manage a place to read or to interchange book, it's totally different. And that also makes the society, we don't want to run everything that is collective. We want the collectives to run also part of what is this, the resources that we manage. And I think that...
I can imagine not everybody in the city thinks the same way as you, though.
I think not everybody in the city thinks the same way. This is true, and I think that when this government came in June last year, for example, we had this thing that it started here in the David y Velarde. The local forest of this district Retiro was held here last week. And when we put this in the program, then, the press was like, the Soviets, and it's like, it's a very basic participatory process, honestly. It's nothing, it is nothing revolutionary. At the end of the day, there are so many places in the world, in other parts of Europe, in other parts of the world, that are developing spaces. And structures, institutional structures, for people to say what they think about things.
It's everyday democracy. It's like
it's
democracy that happens all the time, and not just when you go out and vote.
Totally.
Right? It's being engaged
It's
in
being
your community.
engaged. It is framed by even directives of the European Union. I mean, it's not that revolutionary, but to implement it in Spain, in Madrid, and specifically by a governmental structure that is like an alien to the political field. It's not an established party. It's made out of people that some of us don't have, didn't have experience in institutional politics. We were doing politics somewhere else. So everything that we do is suddenly is put somewhere else. It's looked with another lens. And so not everybody thinks like this. Not everybody thinks like this, even inside the government, even inside the institution. The institutions have a super important and remarkable feature, which is stability.
Yes.
This is it, and it's needed. The institutions are thought to not depend on specific people, to have their own set of rules, and to not go on through time. But this is a characteristic that when you have these institutions of the nation state that started in the late 18th, 19th century, this maybe is not the best characteristic we deal with the society right now.
Yeah, they became creatures unto themselves and distanced from their reason for being, which is actually the people.
Yep.
And I think being able to renew or rejuvenate a partnership between institutions and citizens is an incredibly important task, because I don't think many people would be saying we have to upend it all and throw it out. As you said, there's stability there. There is, there is a long-term commitment to something, but needs to shift a little bit and then open up in a renewed partnership with the citizens, with the people.
We had three key concepts when we were thinking how are we going to explain our strategic lines of on culture and sports, because we also manage the sport field, which had many parallels, by the way.
You have a golf course, I hear, as well.
The golf course, yeah, we have everything. We have a lot of different let's say, devices. But we thought about three key concepts. One was access. Like, how do you give access to the infrastructures, access to the programs, but access to the production itself?
Right.
The other one was openness, how you open the institution, how you open the information, how you open the processes of taking decisions as well. And the third one, the support. Yeah. Support to the fabric, to the cultural and sports fabric of the city. Yeah. So in Spanish, it's nice because it's acceso, apertura y apoyo, so it's like 3A, so it's a little bit more coherent. But we try to engage on these terms. So openness is basic. Yeah. It's to open. I used to teach for years landscape architecture, and what I like it of urban planning and landscape architecture processes, somehow, how I explained to my students was like the process of creating an urban plan or even a building sometimes is like a black box. Like very often the designer gets the inputs and then in their heads they produce a product. I said what is interesting is that you open up this black box and the process is transparent, because in that way then people can say, no, this parameter that you took to take this decision, we don't agree, or this thing we think is missing. But if you don't lay down the process, then it's difficult to interact with this, with the result. You don't know if the results are not right or wrong. The results are the end stage of a process. Yeah. If you don't know what has been the process, then it's not useful. What happens also in the institution is that those processes are difficult to communicate, and they are also difficult to interact with them. And they depend on many bylaws, decrees, and considerations that are embedded in this construction of the institution.
That compounded create that exclusion, which then says, well, to an individual, there's no entry point for me in this. I can't get into it at all, so I'm not going to bother. Yeah. And what we're hoping to do, and what I hear from you, and also this with European Cultural Foundation, bringing together ideas, very local ideas, with also experiences from cities, is how can you open up that black box in different ways? It's going to have to vary city to city, region to region, village to village. But at the basis, it needs an openness that says we both bring something and we both need something, and we have a shared interest in making this space that we live in better. And I think that's, I mean, it's a long-term process, and it's been very exciting, of course, to watch what's happening here in cities in Spain, and particularly in Madrid, and to partner with the city on the Idea Camp, for sure. How do you see them? One of the things that we talk about is this real value of interlocal connections. So the Idea Camp brings together 50 idea makers from very different places. And it's international because they come from many countries, but more importantly, it's interlocal. Do you see how in Europe we can make connections better, both between cities and also pushing on a European level some of the changes that need to happen on a local level that would have a much stronger picture of Europe than what we have now, which is countries coming together?
Well, this is what, I mean, we presented to the local elections because we thought that the local scale was the scale that allow us to deal with the processes and to take in all this social innovation that is shown also like places like the Idea Camp. But at the same time, we recognize the power of the cities getting together and the territories on that side getting together, and also like the capacity of these local governments to share experiences that deal with different categories, sometimes even different languages that you find on regional and on national and on national level. For us, it's very important to connect with another initiatives, and also to try to analyze what is the influence that we can have at European level, as you said, because there is the local governments are purely administrative devices. You don't produce legislation. You depend from, in Spain, at least from regional and national legislation. But regional and national legislation also coordinate with European directives that then set up almost philosophical lines that have to be implemented in different territories at different times. So sometimes it has been difficult to identify what are these processes. But when they got into the territory, sometimes it's very clear, no? Where, and we have to also have this exercise to identify where is this coming from. So for us in Spain, you can see it very clear, the way we also work together and coordinate with different cities. How, for example, in the case of the refugees, for us it's very, very clear how the cities want to welcome these refugees. This is the banner that we have hanging in the headquarters of the city hall in Madrid, refugees welcome.
Yes.
But it is the state that is not somehow making possible that these refugees are coming. How do we coordinate among the refugee welcoming cities in Europe, but somehow also how these problems resonate with the sanctuary cities in the States as well.
Yeah.
I think that we are convinced, and we have been also working on another network of city, that the local governments across Europe, across also the world, can coordinate and share experiences and propose initiatives to the European level as well. And I think that this will be like a system of getting ideas and proposals from the local level that then could go to European level and then make this dripping off till they come back again.
Yeah, fantastic. So that exactly is this partnership then on the Idea Camp, which brings not only EU, but the broader understanding of Europe and neighborhood on a local level together here in the city of Madrid. So I see this cycle happening in a kind of a laboratory here in Madrid.
That's why the reason when we got this proposal from Platonic, for us was very clear that this was a project that totally fitted into our strategic lines, and that it supported the work of the Department of Social Innovation that was just started. And for us it's I think that it just fits with what we're doing, and we find articulations and things that resonate with it all the time, basically.
Well, I think the social innovation is so important as well, because we both struggle a lot with how you talk about what the value of culture is and how culture is understood, and it is so empowering to see that that language is coming into social innovation more broadly spoken, and not in a box, back to your box analogy, that is defined as arts and culture, but it's as a vehicle, as a space within which change happens.
I think that the first opportunity that we had to really see this is when we went to Amsterdam last year for the Prince Margaret
Yes.
Award. And if you see the laureates, no, of that award of the European Culture Foundation, you could see how it's an understanding of culture that is not based on a sense of the production of a certain kind of artistic spirit, but basically of processes that are embedded on the social fabric, and how it's taking this social innovation, all these ideas and desires and needs and proposals that come from the society, and that have an emergence on some kind of thing that we can call culture. But I don't know if the Media Lab is like your normal cultural center. But what we are now doing, for example, with the Media Lab is say, okay, this has been placed on this cultural production, and it has like a very important role, but there is the opportunity now to link it to the production of policies inside the town hall, so that it's not
Yes.
a parallel level, but that
It's
more
embedded.
and more it's embedded, and more Media Lab is working together with different departments. Now they work, for example, in a project of mobility, but they have another with the districts, to see and actually to then analyze what do we need to change from the institution to allow this process to
Yes.
happen. And this, for us, for me, is one of the most important tasks of our government, but also it's the most difficult, because
Sure.
you have to find and understand this machine, this institutional machine, and try to make to transform the pieces while the machine is still running.
Yes,
So
exactly. You can't let the
it's-
machine stop.
No, it doesn't stop. It
Yeah.
keeps on, but you have to make it do different things on the way. So this is, I think that's
Yeah.
our greatest challenge. And but I think that processes like this will help us also to understand, and also like the meeting that we're going to have parallel to this.
Clearly, you're rising to the challenge here in Madrid.